that we wanted to attack was holding executives accountable and leading inclusively in their day-to-day activities. So, how will we hold an executive accountable to do anything? Well, one, what we want to do is we want to build a business case. We want to explain the ROI, the return on investment. We had a great speaker yesterday that laid out for us how for every point that your diversity increases, especially at the executive level, you get an increase or return that's considerable with regard to financial impact. So we want to explain that, and we want to align it to the business value, showing how diversity can make our business more susceptible to customers, make us more appealing, give us more points of view, etc., things like that. Third of all, we want to make it clear what's desired. So a lot of people say do the right thing. Sometimes executives may not know exactly what the right thing is. So we want to be able to explain that. Okay? Number 2, showcasing data to demonstrate importance. We all deal with data, right? So what do we want to do with regard to showcasing data? Why is this an item? That's because what we want to do is we want to intercept the data prior to it getting to the executive. Determine what that data means to us and how it can help best push our points, our objectives, and we want to frame it in that manner as we give it to the executive in order to assist with them giving us the buy-in. We don't want to just give the data to the executive and let them run off to their own devices. Okay, so we want to influence them as we're handing them the data, so we want to look at it first and analyze it for them. Number 3, justifying D&I development to continue investment. Okay, so we already know D&I increases, we all know that D&I increases the viability of the teams. And in my opinion, this was a redundant item. We know that if we invest in D&I, we're going to have more powerful, more robust, more intellectually capable teams. So this will actually dovetail into item number 1 when you're describing the return on investment on the D&I initiatives. And with regard to number 4, pushing innovation in initiatives to avoid complacency. So what we thought here with regard to pushing innovation, some of the methods that we want to put forward are, 1, keeping an eye on the competition. The way that we're going to innovate is you're going to look at your competition, you're going to see what they're going to do, and try to build upon that or build a better mousetrap before they do. We want to have initiatives, incentives, I should say. One of the things that I learned being a manager over engineers is they're very competitive, and even a small monetary award could drive engineers to go above and beyond and create solutions that you never would have even known existed, even awards as small as $250. So I said, and the team agreed, maybe we could take a little small portion of the budget, put it to the side to incentivize creative thought, and invite everybody in to participate, and let's let the best idea win. And you will be surprised when you get a group of people, if you incentivize them with just a little bit of money, a little bit of recognition, what you will pull out of a group. And moving on, capturing responsibilities and involvement of D&I executives to build credibility. Okay? So what you want to do, what we decided that we would do, is we would lay out a roadmap. I call it tell them what you're going to tell them. Okay, so we will have our team created. We lay out the roadmap, what it is that we want to achieve. We tell them what we're going to tell them. And then throughout the year, on a regular cadence, we will tell them. And then what we'll do is on a regular cadence as well, we will put out a newsletter, some type of executive spotlight to show what has been accomplished. What that will do is, 1, people know what's to be expected. They're looking for action items to be taken up on. And then they're getting the feedback on what the results were. That's going to build up the credibility. When the people are working with the team and the people see that the executive has actually appointed the team and the executive is involved, this is where the executive and the team builds up that credibility. And at the same time, they're still maintaining their responsibilities, which is to move the company forward with regard to the D&I intent. So those were the 5 points that we went over just briefly. We didn't have a whole lot of time. I guess you all can tell I'm a little bit nervous. It is. I think it's a lot easier sitting in those chairs. That's why I didn't get the right slides on the sheet. But thank you all very much. This is group number 1, Deshaun Jones out.
Good job. Good job. Deshaun, where are you from? Chicago? Oh, okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Deanna Scales from BuzzFeed, representing Group 2. So we talked about 3 of the bullet points. So holding executives accountable. One of the things that we talked about that Comerica does is they have a scorecard for each of their business leaders that's tied to their bonus. And on their scorecard, they're scored on things like procurement and diverse board members. But one of the things that's on there is the involvement in BRGs and ERGs. And so the leader doesn't necessarily have to be involved in the ERG or the BRG, but their score is tied to someone in their business being involved in it. And so we thought that was really interesting. And not just membership or passive membership, but actually being involved and going to meetings and being in leadership. One of the second area we covered was showcasing data, and USAA shared with us that they share quarterly analytics with each of their business leaders. The analytics come from surveys, so they have 3 surveys: culture, risk, and inclusion. Somebody from USAA can correct me if I'm wrong. And they report out on the results of that survey as well as the demographics from the survey. What the business leaders do is they take the information from the survey and then come up with priorities that they report out to their CEO. And so they're expected to act on those priorities. And then finally, we talked about pushing innovation. Some of the things we talked about there were micro-learnings, marketing your micro-learnings or other, initiatives for D&I through your newsletters, following up those micro-learnings with webinars that people can actually attend in person or call into. We at BuzzFeed, we've tried to gamify those micro-learnings. And so maybe there's a leaderboard for people who've completed the quickest or completed the most. And maybe there's people at BuzzFeed love swag. And so the gift is, swag or BuzzFeed branded content. And another thing that we're playing with at BuzzFeed is a learning week. And so the theme around Learning Week is all about your learning journey. And so everybody would get a passport, and you get a stamp in your passport when you complete a certain number of trainings or every training that you complete. And so that's just kind of making it fun for people. And part of the reason why we do the Learning Weeks is because we have a small learning team, and they're only located in LA and New York, but we have offices all over the world. And so I'll go to, let's say, the UK next, do a learning week, get them excited about learning, and then we'll go to Brazil next, or we'll do a learning week in New York. So those are some of the things we talked about.
Just a quick time check. We have about 4 minutes before break, so it's okay. We may just go over just a little bit to make sure that everyone gets an opportunity. So let's make sure we keep our comments maybe to about 2 minutes. Everybody's been doing great. So who wants to be next? 3 or 4 or 5 or 6? All right.
All right, you take that jacket off. Yeah, she gets serious.
If there's any special music that you want when you come out,
Is she in the beehive?
I feel it.
Okay, so group 3, I'm going to keep it very brief. We captured 2 things. We talked about capturing responsibility and involvement. We kind of kicked it off with a conversation around creating like those executive IDACs or executive advisory committees. We all kind of agreed that giving them the responsibility to actually provide direction was not the greatest approach. So PJ actually shared with us that what they do at her organization is that they actually kind of restructured their executive leadership council, and the I&D team kind of owns the enterprise framework, and then they use that council to help with communication, to get insight, garner input, and then kind of use that as kind of like the facilitation to kind of disseminate the information down through the organization. And then also we talked about justifying D&I development to continue investment. We talked about how do we address those conversations around intersectionality. And then I shared that, some of those conversations around intersectionality may be industry specific. So how do you kind of create coalitions? I shared with us in Chicago, being a part of the banking industry, we actually have an organization called the Financial Services Pipeline. It's all the banks in the city of Chicago that address what we saw were disparities of African Americans and Latinos in regards to their experience within the financial services industry, and we work together collectively in conjunction with the Federal Reserve Bank. So we're trying to kind of get the input from a governmental standpoint as well as an industry standpoint of how we're going to address that. We created a toolkit around the industry so that we can go actually into the city, into the school system, and actually show what a career looks like in the industry. So we're actually getting ready to launch that in the spring, and we partner with the Chicago Public Schools. So that's something that we're doing to kind of address it from an industry standpoint. Yes, it is. Group 4? Okay.
That's it.
Woo. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Well, I like Beyonce too. You can put a ring on it.
It is my birthday today, so
Hey, happy birthday. First of all, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
As you can tell, I'm extremely nervous. This is way out of my comfort zone.
What's up?
I will do my best. Two things unique about me. Like I mentioned at the pre-workshops, if you watch The Office and know the main character, you'll easily know my name. For those of you all that don't, I'm Michael Scott. I work for an agency that has access to your money before you do, and that you pay most of your federal taxes to. That's Uncle Sam. Specifically, the Department of Energy, Office of Intelligence, and Counterintelligence. So I represent Group 4, and we mainly focus on bullet number 1, since it's such an important topic. Some of the issues that we actively discuss, was, and help me out, group members, developing an executive toolkit, such as videos and podcasts, managing change, have our executive leaders develop a consistent and D&I message across the board, to educate our leaders on what is happening in the D&I realm, and developing and defining ways to encourage our leaders to lead in an authentic way. And also to develop common D&I objectives at the senior level so that they can model D&I behaviors across the board, and develop a D&I action plan, then discuss their plans with other D&I leaders so that we can begin to hold them more accountable. Group members, did I leave anything out? Yeah. All right, Group 4. Group 5 and 6 is no need for you. Just kidding. Group 5.
Good morning.
Morning.
So my name is Musette Shada. I am from Bon Secours Mercy Health, and we only got to 2 bullet points. So the first one is how do we get the CEOs, or how do we get leadership on board, executives? And so we thought we would start with compensation, right? We all want to get paid. So linking it to compensation or KPIs, key performance indicators, would be a great way to get people on board and executives on board. Sorry, I'm out of breath already. Anyway, you see my condition. The second one would be recognition. We saw that competition is huge, and so when you recognize executives for what they've done, I know some of my team members talked about maybe having a ribbon, and then if they win, they share their stories. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Or something called a Pride Tribute. That you can send somebody a thank you note or a great job, and then the leadership sees that. So that's great. And then finally, a CEO action plan. When you get your CEO sign something like a pledge, or for us, like the Healthcare Anchor Network, We're doing it, right? So we're plugging all this D&I stuff because it's coming straight from the CEO. That's how you get your executive buy-in. And then the second thing is, I'm nervous, sorry. The second thing is around data. So first of all, I just want to say that data is just a tool. So even though it's great to share it, it's great to get a starting point, but it's not the entire story. So make sure that when you do share the story, or when you do share the data, you're also looking beyond that, not just the numbers. And so one of the things that we looked at is showing the data with the ERGs, executives to focus on strategies, making sure that they know, what direction they're going to. Building a dashboard is really cool. With all of the data that you have, diversity data. I know for us at Bon Secours Mercy Health, we've gone into Workday. It's kind of like PeopleSoft, and you can actually build a diversity dashboard in that. And then using Tableau. I guess that was one of the things that we said that you can plug in your numbers and then reports will come out. That's it. Thank you.
So to have this would be overkill. So we can put this, take this.
My hard of hearing.
You said, no, I think I talk loud enough that I got it. I promise you. But thank you. I appreciate it. Just say it. So my name is Kelly Grayson, and I'm from Sally Beauty Holdings. And our group, we please chime in at any time if I forget something or if there's an important point. We only got to one bullet. However, this conversation gets good, right? And everyone wants to give their input because you have a lot of great initiatives that you're doing at your organizations that you want to get input in or see or share with other people. So, but what we found is that one bullet tied into a lot of our other bullets. So the first one, what I found is that most of my teams, they have direct support from their executive sponsors. So they have a lot of visibility from their executives into their lines of business, that they have the leverage or they have the platform to be able to speak to diversity and inclusion, and they can begin to include it into those conversations about performance and key performance indicators, and how do you govern the business and how do you tie it to business performance and how it cascades into the overarching organizational goal. So that was one that tied into it. And then it tied into dashboards and having data. So having the data to be able to support those decisions that you're able to then present to your executive leaders, because now you have the numbers, because a lot of times decisions are made on numbers. So you have the data to support it. So they utilize data and dashboards, and each time adding incremental pieces in there to be able to support it, to expand their knowledge and their growth of the initiative that they were trying to perform. Another one was, I like one that one of the hospitals said that we ask because we care. And it's not that they were trying to overstep their boundaries, but we want to make sure that we're providing you with the service that you need. So there was a demographic in their organization that they were missing because they weren't able to identify some of their needs that they needed. So they started asking some of those difficult questions because we want to make sure that we're providing what we need. So all of it tied in. Did I get everything? Great. Thank you, Group 6.